Hey everyone, welcome back to Mimi Horror Stories. Tonight, we're bringing you another episode of spine-tingling horror tales set against the calming sound of rain to help you relax and drift off to sleep. So, get comfortable, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. One evening, I was home alone, catching up on some work in my study. The house was quiet, the only sound being the ticking of the clock on the wall. I was deep into my work when I noticed something unusual out of the corner of my eye. On the table beside me was a small notebook I used for jotting down ideas, but it wasn't in its usual spot. It had moved several inches from where I distinctly remembered placing it. I brushed it off, thinking I must have moved it without realizing. I continued working, but a nagging feeling of unease crept over me. I decided to take a break and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I walked back to the study, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, on the hallway floor, was another one of my notebooks, open to a page I didn't recall writing. I picked it up and scanned the page. It was filled with unfamiliar handwriting, scribbled hastily. The words made no sense, a jumble of letters and symbols. I felt a shiver run down my spine. How did this notebook end up here? And who wrote in it? Determined to shake off the eerie feeling, I returned to the study and placed the notebook back on the shelf. I sat back down at my desk, trying to focus on my work, but soon heard a faint scratching sound coming from the hallway. It was barely audible, but enough to send a chill through me. I got up and cautiously approached the hallway, my heart pounding. The scratching grew louder as I neared the end of the hall. I turned the corner and saw something that made my blood run cold. Another notebook, open on the floor, with more of that strange, unfamiliar handwriting. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The writing seemed more frantic this time, as if whoever had written it was in a state of panic. I couldn't make out any coherent words, just lines and lines of frenzied scribbles. I felt a cold draft and realized the window at the end of the hallway was slightly ajar. I was sure I had closed it earlier. I shut the window and locked it, my mind racing with fear and confusion. I went back to the study, intending to pack up my things and leave the house for the night. As I entered the room, I froze. All my notebooks were scattered across the floor, each one open to a page filled with that same, unnerving handwriting. My breathing became rapid, and I backed out of the room, too scared to turn my back on the mess. I grabbed my phone and called a friend, desperate for someone to come over. While waiting, I huddled in the living room, every creak and rustle making me jump. When my friend arrived, we searched the house together, but found nothing out of place except the notebooks. We collected them all, and I decided to throw them out, unable to bear the thought of keeping them. The experience left me shaken. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night or who or what wrote in those notebooks. The memory still haunts me, and I've never kept a journal or notebook in the house since. One night, I was home alone, feeling a bit restless. I decided to take a long bath to relax. The house was quiet, with only the sound of water filling the tub echoing through the bathroom. I lit a few candles and turned off the lights, hoping the ambience would help me unwind. As I sank into the warm water, I closed my eyes and tried to clear my mind. Suddenly, I heard a faint knock. I opened my eyes, listening intently. There it was again, 3 soft knocks, coming from somewhere inside the house. I called out, "Hello, is anyone there?" but received no answer. Trying to stay calm, I convinced myself it was just the house settling. I closed my eyes again, but the knocking continued, this time louder and more insistent. I reluctantly got out of the tub, wrapped myself in a towel, and stepped into the hallway. The house felt colder than usual, and the flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls. I followed the sound of the knocking, which seemed to be coming from the living room. As I approached the living room, the knocking stopped abruptly. I stood in the doorway, scanning the room. Everything looked normal, but the silence was unnerving. I took a few steps inside, and that's when I saw a figure standing in the corner, partially hidden in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat as I realized the figure was staring at me. I reached for the light switch, but when the lights came on, the figure had vanished. My heart pounded in my chest as I searched the room, but there was no one there. Checked all the doors and windows, making sure they were locked. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the fear wouldn't subside. I returned to the bathroom to get dressed, my nerves on edge. Just as I was about to leave the bathroom, the knocking started again. This time right behind me. I spun around, and to my horror, I saw a message written in the condensation on the mirror, "Get out." I bolted from the bathroom, my heart racing. I grabbed my phone and called a friend, begging them to come over immediately. I waited outside, shivering in my towel, too scared to stay in the house alone. When my friend arrived, we searched the entire house, but found no signs of anyone having been there. The message on the mirror had disappeared, leaving only my terrified reflection staring back at me. To this day, I don't know who or what was in my house that night. I moved out shortly after, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The memory of those knocks and the chilling message still haunts me, a reminder that some things are better left unexplained. One late evening, I was home alone, catching up on some reading in my bedroom. The house was eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old floorboards. As I turned a page, I heard a soft humming sound. I paused, listening intently. The humming grew louder, coming from somewhere downstairs. Curiosity got the better of me, and I set my book aside. I crept down the stairs, the humming becoming clearer with each step. It sounded almost like a lullaby, but there was something unsettling about it. I followed the sound to the living room, where the noise seemed to be the loudest. To my surprise, the room was empty. The humming continued, but now, it seemed to be coming from the basement. My heart raced as I approached the basement door. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it slowly. The humming was unmistakable, echoing up from the darkness below. I grabbed a flashlight and descended the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The humming grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't a recording. It sounded like a person humming. As I reached the bottom, I swept the flashlight beam around the room. There, in the corner, was an old rocking chair that had belonged to my grandmother. It was moving slowly back and forth, creaking with each motion. The humming was coming from the chair, but there was no one sitting in it. My blood ran cold as I approached it. Suddenly, the chair stopped rocking, and the humming ceased. The basement fell into an eerie silence. I stood frozen, flashlight shaking in my hand. Then, I noticed a small, dusty box under the chair. It was something I had never seen before. I picked up the box and opened it. Inside were old photographs, letters, and a locket. The letters were written by my grandmother, and as I read through them, I realized they were love letters to a man I had never heard of. The locket contained a picture of my grandmother and this mysterious man, both smiling happily. As I stood there, piecing together this hidden part of my grandmother's past, the humming started again, softly at first, then growing louder. It was as if she was there, trying to communicate with me. The rocking chair began to move once more. One rainy evening, I was home alone, listening to the sound of raindrops tapping against the windows. I decided to spend the night catching up on some old movies. I turned off the lights, settled onto the couch, and pressed play. About halfway through the movie, the power suddenly went out. The house was plunged into darkness, and the only light came from the occasional flash of lightning. I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight, and made my way to the kitchen to find some candles. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate. I reached the top of the stairs and saw the bedroom door slightly ajar. The sound was definitely coming from inside. I pushed the door open, my hand trembling. The room was empty, but the sound persisted, now seeming to come from the closet. I steeled myself and opened the closet door. Nothing. The footsteps stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I was about to turn away when I noticed something strange. The floor of the closet had faint, muddy footprints leading to the corner. As I followed the footprints, I noticed a small, old-fashioned key lying on the floor. It looked ancient, covered in rust. I picked it up, feeling a strange connection to it. Suddenly, the closet door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my phone and shone the light around, but there was nothing there. My heart raced as I opened the door and hurried back downstairs. The power came back on just as I reached the living room, and the house seemed to return to normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Later that night, As I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard the footsteps again, this time in the hallway outside my bedroom. They were closer, more insistent. I clutched the key tightly in my hand, wondering what it could unlock and why it had appeared now. The footsteps stopped outside my door, and I held my breath, waiting. After what felt like an eternity, they moved away, fading into the distance. The rest of the night was uneventful, but I didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, decided to investigate the key. I searched the house for any old locks it might fit, but found nothing. Despite my fear, I didn't bring myself to get rid of it. I keep it hidden in a drawer, a reminder of that unsettling night. One stormy night, I found myself home alone, the wind howling outside and rain pounding against the windows. The power flickered a few times, but stayed on. I decided to pass the time by organizing the attic, a task I had been putting off for months. I climbed the creaky stairs, the dim light of a single bulb barely illuminating the dusty space. As I sorted through old boxes, I stumbled upon a small, ornate chest. It was locked, but curiosity got the better of me. I remembered an old skeleton key in the kitchen drawer that might fit. I retrieved the key and, to my surprise, it worked. Inside the chest were old photographs, letters, and a delicate silver locket. The photos were of a family I didn't recognize, and the letters were dated over a century ago. They spoke of a tragic love story, of promises made and broken, and a woman who had vowed to wait for her lover's return. Suddenly, the attic light flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to see. The wind outside seemed to grow louder, almost like a wail. I felt a chill in the air, colder than the storm outside. As I was about to head back downstairs, I heard a soft, mournful sobbing coming from the far corner of the attic. My heart raced as I pointed the flashlight in that direction. There, amidst the shadows, was a faint, ghostly figure of a woman, her eyes filled with sorrow, clutching something to her chest. I wanted to run, but something held me in place. The woman looked at me, and in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "He's coming back. He promised." Then she faded away, leaving only the echo of her words and the lingering sadness in the air. Terrified, I grabbed the chest and bolted downstairs, locking the attic door behind me. I sat in the living room, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. The storm raged on outside, but I felt an eerie calm settle over the house. The next day, I did some research and discovered that the house had once belonged to a young woman who had lost her fiancé in a tragic accident. She had died of a broken heart, waiting for him to return. The chest must have belonged to her. I decided to return the chest to the attic, hoping to bring her some peace. As I placed it back in its spot, I whispered, "He may not have returned, but your love lives on." Since then, the attic has remained quiet, and I haven't heard the sobbing again. The experience left me shaken, but also filled with a sense of compassion for the woman's undying love. Whenever a storm rolls in, I think of her, waiting patiently for her love to return, and hope she has finally found some peace.